Okay, so I'm just finishing up this conversation with Laura Cohen. I think unfortunately I lost my call because my phone died. But so I don't think we're going to be able to save this, unfortunately. But um, I um, I am hoping Tal comes back because that was getting so engaging. There he is. Okay. Sorry, you guys. So let me just get Laura back on here. Hey, so I'm so happy I took lots of notes on what you were saying. So, because I don't think that video's saved. I don't think we're going to have that on IGTV. Anyway,
Actually, while you froze, I got a package from a friend of mine. Her name is Danny Robeson, and she is an amazing glass artist.
ooh,
I'm trying to open up this thing. I sent her some money, you know, just out of the goodness of my heart, and she was like, "I'm going to send you back some art," and I was like, "Okay." So I think it's vital for artists to support each other.
yeah,
And sometimes it's just like, hey, you know what? You deserve $30 because you're
yeah,
cool. So here's $30. And then sometimes that artist will send you back some art. So, sorry for the horrible noise.
that's
There we
so cool. Oh, I get what you're saying. You just like gave her money and she sent you a glass.
go. Here we go.
Let's see
Find
it.
me.
So, did you just like Venmo her?
Yeah. In fact,
Nice.
I've been sending money. I've been getting unemployment money, and I've been sending money to friends of mine who are artists who I know are not getting unemployment money
Yeah,
or who I just think deserve it. Hello from New Jersey.
yeah, I love that.
And I think it's like, if I'm not like super wealthy or anything like that, but I'm actually doing okay
Yeah,
in this time of crisis because I was lucky enough to file for unemployment like immediately.
yeah.
So I've been giving
Aw.
things to friends. She sent me this little glass piece. I told her to make me something I could put in my garden. So this is like a little, just gonna
That's
put it in
very
my
much a piece for a garden.
little hat.
Love it. So, what is her name?
Danny Robeson, Dani, and then Robeson, Rob. It's like
Yeah.
Robinson, but without the extra N in there. Robison, I think. Okay.
I'm so excited that this person, Erica, lives in Princeton because my parents are there. Um,
Say
love
hi
it.
to Margot's parents.
I love it. I love everything we went over. Um, what else? Who else did you support this year artistically? Who did you send?
My friend, I just gave some money to my friend Rose Sharami, and Rose is a visual artist, amazing artist too. She does what's called signal processing. So she'll take like a bunch of older electronics, so like VHS players and like broken televisions, and she'll like wire them all up, and then she just messes with it, and you end up with these like it's glitches. It's like not it's not supposed to be what's the word, like it's taking advantage of a glitch and making it into art, so glitch art, and it
Very
looks amazing.
cool.
Yeah, so she does a lot of really cool stuff, and she's also a musician, and she does a lot of the same sort of things with music where she just like patch all this stuff together and just start making noises and not really knowing what's necessarily going to come out, which is,
Yeah.
I love art where you don't know what the result is going to be. I appreciate art where people spend like hours and hours making something absolutely perfect and like the craftsmanship of that, but that it's a lot more fun to just like do something and see what happens. Like spin art, like
Mhm.
where it's like a piece of paper spinning and you just like drop
Oh
paint on
yeah,
it. I love that.
definitely.
It's like it
Yeah.
always looks really cool, and you're like, oh, I didn't know what was gonna happen.
I just want you to open my mind up a little bit because I have this, like, I picked it up from the street and I think of it sort of like a canvas. Um,
Oh,
but it's been sitting there a bit and I'm like, sometimes I like to take those boards and put like all my interviews that are coming up, like, because I do them daily. So I put all my people and then I have that like visual. Sometimes I make those kinds of things into like vision boards. And then recently I started painting, trying to paint for my friend's cookbook. And that was not such a fun experience. I came out feeling really low energy actually.
Yeah.
Because I was like, you know what? it was kind of like the experience they showed you with like applying to the flower shop. Like of
I can do this.
course I
And
can
then
illustrate your cookbook. You
you know what?
know?
Failure is good. It's like really cliche, but like when you make something and you're like, you know what? I'm an artist. I can make whatever I want. And then you make something that's kind of shitty, and you're like, that's kind of shitty. But it's still valuable.
It gives me respect for you know, just the people who do things really well. Because there's some things I do well and working on doing them really well. And then so tell me from your perspective, like if you have a blank canvas like that, like what kinds of things are you considering?
Oh my God. Blank canvases are probably the scariest thing to most artists because you're like, what if I mess it up? And that's why I'm saying it's good to just make some shitty stuff sometimes. And that's why artists make lots of sketches because when you actually are faced with a canvas that's like it can be a little overwhelming because a lot of times, I mean, you obviously found that canvas, which is awesome, but a lot of times someone has like spent money on this
Yeah.
canvas. So like, okay, now that I've invested this money into this art that I'm gonna make, I have to make the art good. And that's like such a barrier. So I recommend just like start making shit. Like there's this really great video of Picasso, who is actually not one of my favorite artists because I think he was kind of a dick.
A womanizer, yeah.
Yes, that to say the least. But what I love about his process is that in this one particular video, he's actually painting on glass, and it ends up being sort of like a stop motion animation of sorts. But you can see his process. He'll paint something, and he's like meh, and he paints over it,
I think
and then
I've seen the video.
it's
Yeah.
great. It's just like him painting, and then like random interviews. He's just like sitting alone, smoking.
Yes. Yes. I think it's like a series.
Yeah, it's like I used to work at the D Young and we had a Picasso exhibition and
Oh,
we had
you
it
did?
all the time, so I've seen it a bunch.
What did you do at the Young?
Oh, I just worked at the gift shop, but it was a pretty good job because you get to see all the art for free. And one of my favorite exhibitions was Gautier, the fashion exhibition. And they also had some really great exhibitions on actually on ballet, but on the ballet costume. So it's part of the textile art. So
Nice. That's good to be aware of because when I'm in New York, one of my favorite things to do is to go to the FIT museum costume because they'll do like one they had on the color pink.
cool.
They're like so well done and they're free to the public. You can always walk in. You just can't bring drinks. I've had to sit in the lobby drinking drinks for a while
That's
from
fun.
that.
I mean, I just love the atmosphere of being in a museum. I like just, being able to be surrounded by art, but at the same time, it can also be frustrating to be in a museum because you're like, well, why is that on the wall?
Yeah.
I art on the wall.
Yeah.
So, like, why did someone decide that this is the epitome of art? And so, I don't know. When I was taking an art history class when I was in college,
Yeah.
and almost every single class, someone would raise their hand and be like, "Excuse me, like, why is this art?" And like, that's the wrong question. Like, why is it good art? Is the question because
That must have made those classes really fun.
yeah, but like anything is art, you
Yeah.
know? I could take a shit and be like, "Hey, that's art."
Yeah. Yeah. I want to ask you a question actually about how you like sometimes I envy people who grow up with parents who are like outright artists because there's just that level of comfort with creativity and with something like I interviewed a friend of mine who's like a comedy writer recently and he's just like, it was pretty easy with my parents because my mom's like a journalist at People magazine and my dad is like a journalist and they came from industries where there was no one clear path. So like they're very comfortable with all of his like different twists and turns. Whereas I grew up with two lawyers. So there's like a very clear path. And so like a lot of there's been stress at almost every point in my own career, just being like, this is why I'm doing this, da da da. Unfortunately, I'm getting to a point where like I'm no longer explaining my choices, and that's giving me a lot of freedom. But like, I also know about your mom. Like, isn't your mom like a lawyer or something? And
she's an editor. So my mom also works at museums And she just was recently hired at the National Museum of Art. It's like the big all-encompassing art museum in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty big deal. She's an editor. In fact, there's if you go on the National Galleries. Oh no, it's called the National Gallery. Sorry, I messed it up.
Yes.
The National Galleries like website. There's some blog posts that she edited. But what's
Yeah.
interesting, she was talking about this book she's editing, and she's like, this guy is not a good writer, and she's like, he's sloppy. And that it was really interesting to me because she's like, when you're a writer, you have to think about who your audience is. Who are you writing for? Are you writing for other academics? Are you writing for children? Are you writing for the random person who walked into the museum?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I'm making a dance, I'm not thinking about who's watching that dance. I'm thinking about how it feels in my body. And I think that's like the big difference between creative disciplines is like who is the art for? So I think that's what.
Interesting. So are you making the point that in dance, you have permission to kind of be in your body and not be concerned with audience, but as a writer, you must be concerned with audience?
Yeah, I mean, as a writer, like if you want to just journal and write whatever you want,
Yeah.
yeah, write whatever you want for yourself. But if you want to be a writer that is read, you have to think about what people want. Like, as a dancer, what impresses other people though is when you are thinking about what they're going to like. Like, you know that TV show, So You Think You Can Dance?
Yeah.
They're thinking about the audience with all of that choreography. They want flashy things. They want to see the trick. They want you to kick yourself in the face. They want you to do 70 turns without putting your foot down. And that is the dance that they're looking for. That's how they determine your level of quality as a dancer by how many times you can kick yourself in the face during one dance routine.
Mm-hmm.
But for me as a dancer, I don't enjoy watching that because I think it's just kind of a bunch of tricks. And while those tricks are amazing, like in the first season, there was some guy who would like he would like do these breakdancing moves and he would like land on his elbow and like his elbow would be the only thing on the ground. And I'm like, what? And it
Right, like
blew my
incredibly impressive
yeah,
athletically and
yeah. But I didn't watch
yeah.
it because it felt bad to me in my body to watch him do that.
Do you feel like the thing that was offensive about that style of dance was that there was this concern for the audience?
It was overly concerned about the audience.
Okay.
And that is not enjoyable for me. Obviously, it's enjoyable for a bunch of people, and a lot of people made money off of that. So maybe that makes it great, but maybe that also reduces it to entertainment rather than art.
Yeah. Can you talk about like, so first of all, we have a friend named Lucas who's a photographer who joined. So I'm also conscious of him and bringing photography into the conversation. But like, you're so refreshing in like your take on, getting like accolades, getting recognition, getting an audience for your work, and also like having your own creative process. And you seem to like your own creative process seems to be very clearly your priority. And something that I really love about your journey is like you're someone who does so much creative output and you kind of see what sticks and you're not like money obsessed, you're not fame obsessed. And yet like probably in your path, you've probably received like a more major accolade than something else. So like what was a moment when you received like a big pat on the back from the public and how did it feel?
Hmm. Um, uh, well, I did a kind of large project with two other people a few years ago, and just like getting accepted to do the project felt really great because I didn't like know the gallery very well. I didn't know the people who ran it, and since then I've gotten to know them like more and more. And
Was this a dance project or a photo project?
it was more it was more of a music and sculpture project.
Okay.
But I did end up making a dance film inside this giant like cocoon that we made. And
Cool.
then so we ended up making this cocoon and then we had ambient like an ambient music festival happen inside. And like because I ended up working with this gallery for that project, I ended up working with them for like other projects. And it was just really nice to to have them want me to come back. And so it wasn't like any one moment, but anytime someone is like, "Hey, I worked with you before and I want to work with you again,"
Yeah.
great. Because they're all I have wasted my time with many people who have said they want to work with me, and I just say yes to everything because I love making things. And then I realized through the process that I never want to work with that person again. So if someone says they want to work with me again, I'm like, that's great. That
I
means
love
that,
that you mentioned this. What are the things, just tell us briefly, not to harp on them, but like what are the things that make you not want to work with a creative person again?
yeah, okay, so oh yeah, did I get paid an artist fee? I want to answer the question here.
Yeah.
We received a grant, and with the grant, we ended up being able to pay ourselves and other artists, which was really wonderful. Most of the artists we paid them through the ambient performance. When people came to see the show, we paid them through that. And I received some money, but I wasn't actually anticipating receiving that much money. So I just again did it because I like doing it. Um, but the things that really tend to put me off is it's subtle. Sometimes it's just like your energy. Um, like this one person that I was working with, they were not good at listening to ideas, and they had a lot of unreasonable expectations about things like, oh, it'll only take 2 seconds for us to put this backdrop up in the middle of the performance. And I was like, no, you have to set this like a scene. And I was like, no, you got to do this beforehand. He's like, it's fine. And then like during the performance, I was all like, so how long are you going to take for your performance?
Yeah.
Because it's getting late, like people are going to want to go home. And he was like, oh, we're going to do the full performance. And this guy performed for like an hour. And even I was like, I have to go home. Like the Bart's going to close. All right. And he was like, no, no, it'll be fine. People will
What
stay.
time was it?
No, he like went on stage at like 10:30, and it's like getting to be at like 11:30. And I was like,
Who is
um,
Kasim, by
you're
the
not
way?
reading the room. Oh, Kasim is one of my friends from, oh my God, I've known him since like first grade. Yeah, we
Cool.
went to high school together as well. So, no,
This great jeweler, I just want to say this great jeweler, Marco, who works in Florence, just joined. He's a very, very creative jeweler, and Kasim has known you 20 plus years.
isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Oh
I
my
just
God.
remember playing dodgeball in like elementary school with Kasim.
So you gave us
Mostly I
one
remember
great example. Like you gave us a great example, like somebody who kind of like belittles like time and is like, "Oh yeah, no big deal. We don't have to plan."
yeah, or I mean, in some ways you don't have to plan things, but you do have to be able to read the room, especially if you're doing a performance and people are like trickling out, like, hi, maybe we should wrap things up. And he just like kept going. And the thing is, his band was like good,
Yeah.
but his energy was oblivious, which is super interesting to me because he's an energy worker. Like this guy was like an acupuncturist as well. And I was like, how are you
Yeah.
not doing this? And there's several people I brought into the project, and he started explaining the project to them, and they were immediately overwhelmed with his explanation of the project, just explaining it. And they were like, I don't want to do it. And so he scared off my friends because he couldn't explain this project to people without freaking them out.
I mean, I'm
So,
sort of laughing because I feel like it's sort of like it's like a typical artist land. Like you have unique characters, right? It's people who have like, they're liberated souls. They have a lot of like the societal things wiped out, right? So they can be creative. So um
being able to function in society.
I want to hear other examples though of like people you've worked with creatively where you're like, oh yeah, that's what they did wrong. Just so creative people watching, including myself, can be like, oh yeah, please don't do that when we're
I
thinking
mean,
of ourselves.
it's really hard to have a clear idea sometimes of what you want the outcome to be. But just as talking about like with like have thinking about who your audience is. Like one, who do I want to come to this performance? Who do I want to enjoy the art that I'm making? And like what is this art saying? I'm not saying art has to have like a message. I really enjoy experimental films that have no narrative, that have no like overlying objective, but because of that, you also have to be clear about why you yourself is as making the art. And maybe the idea is like, I just need to get my energy out.
Yeah.
When you're working with other people, you have to be a lot clearer about that. And like, I want this dance performance to be 20 minutes long. I don't know what's going to happen exactly during the performance, but this is going to happen at some point, and this is going to happen at some point, and then we'll end. And like, really, for me, that's all the information I need to make the dance performance. Um, but knowing like what the other dancers are expecting of me, that's a whole different thing. Like, um, if you, especially with dance, it's like, how comfortable are you making clear what what you want from them, which is, I'm being redundant now, but because you're talking with your body during a performance, especially if it's improvisational performance, you have to have consent beforehand. Like, I was dancing with certain people where I was not comfortable with them lifting me. Like, I did not want them to hold my body and bring it above the
Yeah.
ground. Um and
And did
but
that
when
happen, or how did that
no,
play
they
out?
respected that really nicely. And I know there have been times where I'm performing with other people where I've probably crossed boundaries and maybe they don't want to work with me again because I wasn't listening to what they were comfortable with.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You mentioned like your mom in the National Gallery and that she's an editor, and I find that all really interesting. And you mentioned a book that she was editing. So I just wanted to ask you for clarity, like does she edit books that are written by artists, like memoirs and like portfolios, or what kind of books does she edit?
It's more academics, it's
Yeah.
like curators who are writing. And curators are usually somewhat egotistical
Yeah.
because they're like, this is the art that I know everything about, and I'm going to tell you everything about this art, and or like this aspect of this one artist, or like, I want to tell you about um porcelain from the 16th century made by this one particular like art house, and then they'll start talking with all this like jargon that they expect everybody to know.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, maybe like the other academics know what you're talking about, but don't you want, yeah, my mom is the goat.
Is that
um
a phrase like someone's the goat?
yeah, that she
Because I
eats.
call this dog the goat, and what does it mean for someone to be the goat?
I don't know, Kasim. She's the best. I don't know,
Kasim, tell us,
Kasim.
what does it mean? Do you
I
know?
don't know exactly, but yeah, she's
Somebody
the
that
goat.
calms the
Yeah.
calms the situation down.
Aw, someone who calms the situation down, greatest of all time.
Oh yeah, that makes more
So
sense.
cute. The baby goat. Um,
The goat. Thank
what
you.
was it? What did you learn about the internal world of the De Young when you were working there?
Oh, the thing about museums is that you think that all these people who have reached like the pinnacle of their career, like you're a curator, you got to where you want to be in your career. You think they would be like way more mature, but there's like a lot of high school drama in those places. Like, again, not being able to communicate. Deadlines are really important in a museum. Like, we have an exhibition coming up. I love all these goat comments now. um, but like, if you're not telling someone that you're behind on what you're doing, then you're gonna set up everybody else for failure.
Yeah,
So they'll like, my mom's working with an editor right now who he's not pulling his weight.
Lucas
Yeah.
says drama everywhere in the art world.
Yeah, but you got to pull your own weight. You can't sign up for things and be like, yes, I can do that. And then you realize like, no, I can't do that. And then keep acting like you can do it. Like, you have to again communicate, which is
Let me ask
so
you
hard
this.
and so
You are
fundamental.
you're so unique, and like you started to describe it a bit, like you are the kind of artist who like you are fine with having art that doesn't have like a specific narrative. You're like very experimental, you're very like expressive in the moment. You're fine with like non-strategical art, pure
There's some
expression. So
strange
is there
stuff.
anything like on Netflix that you watch?
No, actually,
Do
I don't.
you like ever have you gone to the movie theater in like the last year?
I mean, the last thing I went to was like a dance film festival. To be honest, what I watch the most is anime. I love
That
anime.
makes sense.
it's really deep. Like I was watching an anime about like ballroom dancing. Like I don't even like ballroom dancing. Yeah, like,
Wait,
if you
what's Midnight Gospel?
watch this, it's an anime. I'll watch that.
Oh my
Sure.
God, my brother. It's like I was about to say, like my brother would be your kind of artist if he was an artist. Oh my God, Dan just joined. Eli from Berlin, who's also such a performance artist. Um,
What I love about
and Lucas knows him, I'm sure.
there's
But
like really deep like emotions involved, you know? And they're like, what does it mean to live and to love what you're doing and to want to pursue it? Like in this anime, yeah, in the oh, it's an ex. Oh,
I'm
okay.
gonna
I'll
watch Midnight
definitely.
Gospel. I'm writing it down, you two, right now.
But yeah, it's always like, especially with the ballroom dancing one, they're like, why do you want to dance? Why do you want to dance? Like, what is the reason? Why are you doing this? And you know what? Most dancers will just be like, well, I have to dance. I have to do it. And this character is like, I don't know. He's like, I just love it. And you know, that's enough. That's enough.
How do
You
you
don't
manage your own visual identity in the world? Your hair, your face, your clothing, how you appear to the world?
well, I recently discovered that I guess maybe in like the last couple years, I discovered my favorite colors are red and green. And unfortunately, red and green are like very much Christmas colors in our culture.
Because you like them together.
Yeah, I love them. And it makes me really sad that like everybody sees those colors and they're like, Christmas. And I'm like, what about strawberries and watermelons and tomatoes?
Oh,
And
it's such good points you're making. Watermelons, strawberries. Yeah, we need to remember those with that color combo.
there's so many like red and green look really good together and like
I actually
the,
have seen you wearing red and green, and I feel like I just always assumed you had some kind of Christmas fetish.
exactly. I
Because you
don't
kind
not
of look like an elf because you wear that red and green stuff and you're sort of skinny and
elf like I'm elven, but my hair's kind of the dye has kind of gone out of it because I haven't redyed it recently. But I've been dyeing my hair with red and green a bunch because I want to look like a little succulent. Thank you, Kasim. Because like succulents in the winter, they turn red at the tips and then they're all green. So I want to look like a little succulent. Oh
Lucas
yeah,
said you just need to move to a Muslim country, my dear, and you'll be fine. That's hysterical.
yeah, a flag or something like that. Like I think the Lebanese flag is red and green. Oh, the Italian flag, Power Rangers. Yeah. In fact, this art that my friend just made me is red and green. Love it. What other thing I love about red and green is that if you're colorblind, if you're red green colorblind, they you can't tell the difference, and I think that's so crazy that
They're
like
just like wearing black.
well yeah, and so we're all black and then like red and green.
But someone who's colorblind, if they're looking at you and you're wearing a red top, what do they see? Just gray, or do they?
I mean, like, that's exactly the thing is like, we think that what we see is what everybody can see, but that is not the case at all. Like, have you ever had like a serious argument with someone about what the color of something is? Like, my husband and I fight over the color of this one shirt. I'm like, it's green. He's like, it's black. And so, like,
I'm pretty sure you're right. I don't just without knowing much context. I'm pretty sure it's actually black. No, he's saying it's black, and you're saying
he
it's
said
green.
it's black. I'm like, it's green. And then I wore the shirt with a black shirt, and he's like, okay, now it looks kind of brown. And I'm like, no, it's
Oh,
green.
I feel like I rely so much on a common reality. That it must be difficult to proceed with a conversation where there's that much disagreement. Um, but
I mean,
take us back to like working with your artists. Like it's like, is that like when you're with another artist and you're collaborating on a dance, how do you manage conflict and differences?
the thing is, I usually don't have to work with people. I usually don't work with people who I have a lot of creative differences with. Not like because I'm trying not to work with them. It's just usually the people that want to work with me are the people who already have similar styles or approaches. Um,
I love that
and
you mentioned like Gautier, by the way, because I feel like it doesn't surprise me that when you were at the De Young and working there, that that was one of your favorite shows. Because to me, that aesthetic is very much like yours.
oh
Who are
yeah,
some of the other people that whose aesthetics like really resonated with you?
oh my favorite artist ever is Yayoi Kusama. Like she's famous for dots, which is so crazy that she took something that is pretty universal, like dots, whatever, they're everywhere. Um, and she made it like her art. And she has such a crazy life story. Like she's really been through some stuff, and she currently lives in a mental asylum, I believe. And she just, does her art, does whatever she wants, but like she's like the either the most famous or at least like the most well paid artist in the world right now. And there was a period of time where she was like straight up homeless, and there was a period of time where she had to go back to oh yeah, Bauhaus, exactly. But she had to go back to Japan, like kind of almost as a failure, and now she's like the most recognized artist in the world. And I just think it's amazing that you can have so many ups and downs over the course of your career. Like what is success? Like what is that? Like at
This
one
is
point.
reminding me of Alex Leclerc, who went to school with Eli and I, and he's the only one on this call where that name is gonna ring a bell. But I wish we had her art. She died, and she was one of our most creative friends, and she made really wild, very strange art. It was almost like borderline social harassment. Like people would hate her, but she'd go into like frat basements and like rearrange like the buckets and put candles, and like people would wake up and there'd just be like mandala of her expression of like isolation on campus. And like she just did the craziest stuff all the time. And I really just wish we had her stuff still. But for a lot of performance art, like immaterial. Who else has influenced you?
Ooh.
Who
I
else
mean,
do
I
you
can
love?
talk more about Yo-Yo Kusama, really. But I've definitely been influenced by my friends, by random people on the internet. Like I recently came across a bunch of like beekeepers on the internet, and I'm like so inspired by the way they commune with these bees. Yeah, rest in peace.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you
I
guys.
just I think that you can find artistic inspiration through people who don't necessarily consider themselves artists very easily. And that's something I actually liked about Picasso, is that he would take trash. Same thing with Magritte. Um, like literal garbage and turn it into something that is just like viewed in a new way. And so that's what really inspires me. Like I mentioned my friend Id. Id makes music from Game Boys. And like they didn't like discover that. Like there's been music on Game Boys, but using your Game Boy to make music is like
Oh,
freaking
cool. Interesting. So Usha Moss just came on, and she, it's like one of the sort of least art-like topics in my heart is yoga.
Yo,
Um,
is art.
but that's why I want to hear your opinion on it, because I mean it's something that the three of us, I no longer teach yoga. I just found, I think I certainly had like so much artistic like there's something about like manning a room for an hour and doing literally whatever you want with the people. Like I would joke with Gazella that I would be like I could like get people to like touch their nose and like do this. Like you can
And now
it,
everyone keeps their nose together.
yeah, like you and I were in the training to, you and I were in the training together, like literally like 7 years ago, something
No, it
crazy.
was 5 years
Five,
ago.
okay. Um, but I just found ultimately like the frame or the canvas of like a yoga studio and checking the students in, like to me, it ended up kind of repulsing me as like a canvas. Um, and I think I felt a lot of expectation to follow. At the end of the day, you still have to say inhale, lift, exhale, fold. Like you have to give breath cues. And I just felt that ultimately it wasn't a good use of my voice. And so I became slightly critical of yoga in a way. And I still do it on my own. But I want to hear you, because like you are beyond creative. Like I'm so much more conventional than you are. So like, how do you manage the studio and like that as an art space?
Being really creative in a yoga setting can actually be super detrimental. Like, yeah. I don't miss touching strangers actually. Like, I
Me
really
so,
don't.
so I do.
the hard part for me when teaching a yoga class is that you have like a lot of expectations. Like you want the class to go a certain way. You're like, everyone do this pose, and then one person doesn't do the pose, and you're like, oh, okay. Is it me? Is it them? You have to assume it's them. Um, but like when it really came to like sequencing, I found the more creative I was, the less I was able to pay attention to the people in front of me because I was paying attention to my sequence and being like, let's go here, let's go here. Oh, let's do this. Oh, we could do this, and this could go into that. And like in a choreographic sense, like yeah, that's a lot of fun. That's exciting. I'm choreographing every single class, but then I have to do the exact same thing on the other side. And if you don't remember what you came up with, even if it was like amazing and flowed really well together, people are going to know that you don't know what you're doing and you're just like throwing random shit at them.
You mean like when you would teach a sequence and make it up on the spot,
Yeah,
impromptu?
I
Yeah.
would do that like, at certain times.
That's
And
what I did every time. I mean, I never went in. There were so many teachers that come in with I never went in with what I was going to do. And for
that
the
would be,
most part, it works. I mean, once in a while, you forget what you did on one side and then it's kind of like shit. But
yeah. And you're like, just do it on the other side.
yeah, yeah. I feel like the side of you that like, I can see you doing check-in and like doing some of the more like conventional aspects of yoga just because you're so sweet and you're sensitive. I mean, there's a part of you that can like you can shed a tear pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, I'm a crybaby, but
But I think that probably makes those parts of teaching yoga okay. You're able to integrate them.
yeah, I mean, the thing is, I've definitely been like hurt by people's comments, but they've never said those comments to my face. Like, I got a really mean Yelp review once where they were like, I've been taking yoga for 14 years and she is the worst teacher I've ever had. And I was like, okay, well, if you're really doing that much yoga, why are you like going on the internet and bad mouthing people? Like part of yoga is, being nice,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
fine. So, well, I just want to answer one of the questions someone had earlier is that like, are there dance yoga combination classes or some sort of fusion, or is that Pilates? Pilates is really more about strength building, and they do like breath work as well, but it's pretty different than the kind of work you would do in a yoga class. And there are some yoga classes that are very dancey or
Like Laughing Lotus in San Francisco and
yeah,
that tradition of Laughing Lotus in New York and LA, I think too, right?
certain classes can be more dancey. Like I think of a vinyasa class as being the most dancey because you're not going to do the exact same combination every time. You do similar things. And I do think of when I'm doing a class, like when I'm taking a class, I think of it as choreography. And I think about like every single movement that my body is making as if I was on stage. Because like that's the sort of control that you want to have over your physical body, but also over your mind while you're doing it. You want to be as much in the moment as possible. Yeah. And like not to knock Pilates, like I make a lot of jokes about Pilates.
You
Uh,
do?
yeah, in my yoga classes, I pretend to like I'm trying to start like a yoga Pilates war. And then being like, if you've ever taken a Pilates class, get out of here.
I
I
love that.
don't know what you believe, but
I
like
taught yoga Lattes for a while.
yoga, yeah, that's the
Which like
thing.
Gazella and I would literally like laugh about the fact that I was teaching yoga Lattes. Because there's
Yeah,
just something so ridiculous about the whole thing.
I mean, yoga has gone in the Western world pretty far from where it actually started in the Eastern world. But I think that even if you're doing a bunch of push-ups in a yoga class, that might eventually lead you to some sort of spiritual enlightenment. At the very least, it's going to like make you feel better in that moment. And just like sweating and using your body at all is good work to do.
You know
Um,
who I have enjoyed recently is listening to MC Yogi and just like stretching and making breakfast. There was a woman, a photographer I did an interview with recently, and she's a yoga teacher too in the past, and she said she puts him on and she just does like little like one song. Eli in Berlin says, I've had Pilates instructors yell at us for being too yogi. Oh my God, that whole thing. It is sort of like yoga versus Pilates. Can I tell
Yeah.
you the most common question I used to get from strangers when I would tell them I was a yoga teacher, which I'm such a brat, but I'm so grateful I don't say that. I don't have to say that anymore.
Yeah.
Um, they would say, what kind of yoga do you teach? I
Yeah.
mean, it's fine. It's just like, it just shows a lot. I think what they were trying to distinguish between is hot yoga and not hot yoga. I think that was like mostly the aim.
But I mean, if you just turn up the heat in the room, people are always like, "Oh, it's hot yoga," and I'm
Yeah.
like, "No, I just turned the heat up."
I think there are some people where like it's like their destiny. Like there are some really creative people. The only one I'm really thinking of right now is Lauren Pisano in San Francisco. Like she was like put on this earth to teach yoga because she's just like so like I remember one of her phrases was like let it be healing. Like she would teach to these like packed like 150 people in yoga flow on Ocean, and she'd have this amazing music, but she was also just this like spiritual guru character and just truly like teaching some good stuff and very creative sequences. um
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I feel like there was just something in my, it's like yoga for me was almost like finishing, like some of the parts of my life have been like kind of finishing school. Like it's just, it gave me a fundamental for like how to move my body. I can always like lead people in movement. Um, and it almost got to that point where I was like, wow, I can literally do anything I want. And my classes were like so unique and just like, wow, this is kind of like experimental art. Like I'm enjoying this. But
But
how do you manage like is that part of your identity, like being a yoga teacher? Is that one of your creative outlets, like as much as you're a photographer or choreographer?
I mean, yes, in some ways, yoga is it's a job. I mean, it's my main job. That's how I make money. Um, and in some ways, yoga feels like this one size fits all package, you know, like yoga tells you how to think and yoga tells you how to move and yoga tells you how to interact with other people and yoga even tells you how to in some ways like dress, you know, and like yoga can really dictate your whole life if you want it to. And and that can be really positive, but it can also kind of box you in. So I think it's really important to have other outlets. That's why I have so many different like things I like to do. Like I do taxidermy. If I was like a super hardcore yogi, I would
You do
not.
taxidermy?
I would like, but
What?
I'll tell you something to my. But
Yeah,
if I was
wait, what? So you
hardcore,
like do you, like
I wouldn't eat meat, but I eat meat.
oh my God, Eli is so funny. Yoga is a good substitute for sex sometimes. I love to hear you say that. I also like Corey, I need to do like what I would like to do an Instagram live with you about is like what's happening with Berkheim like during quarantine and like how are those people seeing each other, and like that's all I want to talk to you about. So if you're up for that, DM me and tell me that you're up for that. Wait, did you kill this animal?
I did not kill this raccoon. I went to Idaho and I did an intensive study and I learned how to do taxidermy. This is a pigeon. I did not kill the pigeon. I don't know if
What
you can
is
see.
the what's the studio in Idaho that you went to? That's super fascinating.
This is a pigeon that I did stuff with. I don't know.
What
um,
what's the name
wait,
of the
what was the
studio
question? The wait, studio for what?
in Idaho where you studied taxidermy?
Oh, okay. Well, taxidermy is a really interesting world. The person that I went to is, he calls it like the taxidermy school of art, something like that. But he is I would say world class judge. Like he goes to different locations and competitions and judges other people. Excuse me, judges other people's taxidermy.
And
It's
what are
crazy.
the things that like make taxidermy good versus bad in his opinion?
That's the thing. So when you're making like proper taxidermy, you want to make this thing that's dead, that's definitely 100% dead, look as realistic and alive as possible. And some of the most amazing taxidermies are also they're just totally sculptural. Like they'll find ways to make it look like
It's like
Most
running, like Natural History Museum, like that kind of thing.
or it's like like a cat of some kind, like I don't know, a lion trying to get a bird, and the bird is like up in the air, and you're like,
Yeah.
how do you make this bird hang like this? And there's like only one point of contact between like the bird and the animal's paw, and you're like, how do they make this animal stand up like that? And then that's like really amazing, and like it has a lot to do with like knowing animals, like really understanding how an animal moves. And yeah, most time when people get their animals taxidermied, they don't look the same because the person doing the taxidermy might not have known your cat. Like they don't know the
That she's
cat.
always sleeping.
Yeah,
They
but
might put her
if
in
it's
an
really
active position.
if they're really good at it, they'll be able to like capture the right quality of the cat and
So,
like
what would this guy think? What is this expert when he would go around and judge taxidermy? Like, would he be like 2 points off? I see a stitch. Like,
stuff like that. Yeah, like oh, you didn't like really fill in the cheek right here, or this hand looks a little flat, or like that's a little bit awkward. And yeah, like large animals are super crazy. But the thing is, I went in there and I was like, I want it to look like they're in the middle of dying. Like I want it to be obvious that this animal is a dead animal.
that's
And they
a
were like,
really interesting style.
yeah. They're like, that's weird, but okay, we'll do whatever you want.
So, what was it like in that? So, first of all, how long did you spend in Idaho on that topic?
I was there for about a week, and most of the people there were either hunters. There was one woman who was a nurse, like a professional nurse, so she was really good at sewing up. She did like a couple of swans, which were amazing. And then there was a guy.
It's fine. I'm joking.
There was one guy there who was like actually probably the best uh, bird taxidermist in the world. Like he's been winning competitions since he was like a teenager. They had to like invent a teenager's like category for him because he was that good. Where in Idaho? Oh my God, I don't even remember. It was like the middle of nowhere, Idaho, like not even near Boise. I had to fly like this tiny little airport that had like, you know, like three people that worked there. But then so I went,
Well,
I
you gave
made
us the name of it, right?
it's like that if you look up like Idaho School of Taxidermy, like
Yeah.
I can actually I can look up the
Did you?
name.
I have a
But
question. Did you get accept? Did you have to apply and get accepted into that week-long program?
no, it's more just like an intensive, and anybody who wants to go can go. And you basically live at this guy's house for a week, and it was really interesting. Oh, you got to live in Idaho.
What did you? How much do you pay for that experience?
I paid him like about it was under 1,000. It was maybe more like $900. I
Hmm.
actually I used my tax return to pay for it that year.
Love it.
Um,
And then question, are they killing when they do taxidermy? Are they like I feel like the only way I could get behind it is if they're like they're taking animals that are already dead, right?
in some cases. So, okay, for birds, for migratory birds, it is illegal to kill any sort of. There's like a federal excuse me. There's a federal law that protects birds that are migratory. So you can't just like it can't just like kill a hummingbird because they're migratory and taxidermy it. Like that's illegal. Um, but there are places where they like basically farm the birds. Like this guy had a bunch of pheasants sent in, and these birds were raised to be like the most beautiful birds. Like they were given a lot of care, a lot of love. You could tell that they were very healthy birds. And then they'll like depending on what you want to do with it, sometimes they'll just like gas them like CO2. So I have like a bunny that was it just basically it fell
Go to
asleep.
sleep. It's so that there are no mark, like right, like because then they can just do the incision because you take it out. So, what's the market? What's the
A lot of
market?
people they have to shoot them. So they'll be full of like pellet holes. So you have to sew that up. So it really depends on like what you're doing. There is like ethical taxidermy where people will like go find roadkill, but the problem with roadkill is that if it's been out there for a while, like you can't use it because it's already decomposing.
Yeah.
So you need fresh stuff.
When you say like someone had like a bunch of pheasants like sent in, like, or that is that in like in the living state, and then they would like do no,
They were
they would be like frozen.
not frozen exactly, but they were like chilled, I guess, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. And the
Wow.
thing is, a lot of people who do taxidermy are actually love animals And what's really crazy about it is that a lot of hunters also love animals. And it's
Yeah.
just that they have a different relationship with the natural world. And that for them, they get this huge thrill out of sitting and waiting for the perfect moment. And personally, I would get so bored with that. Like, to be a hunter, you have to get a license. And just to get that license, you have to spend a lot of money, and you might not get the license because it's like a lottery as well. And so, even if you do get the money and you do get the license to go hunting, like during bear season or whatever, you might not shoot a single bear. So, you might just like sit out in the woods for
Yeah.
days on end and nothing happens. So it's a really interesting like connection to the natural world that hunters have.
What's the market for taxidermy? Is it just going into like wealthy homes, like
Yeah,
museums here and there?
mostly it's people who have shot their own stuff and they're like, well, I killed this deer and I ate all of the meat, so I'd really like to do
Yeah.
something
That's
that
what
kind
my
of.
cousins do. My cousins in New Orleans definitely fit into the category of they're serious hunters. They are in love with the animals and they like there's like my 6-year-old cousin, like her dad is being like, she's gonna shoot her first deer this year, and like here's the deer head that her older brother got last year on the wall. Um,
Like, I honestly think you should not be allowed to eat meat unless you are capable of killing an animal. And I'm not saying you should go out and like you like if you want to have a cow, you should like go out and kill that cow yourself because just like not everybody can do that. But you should be aware of the process that comes with you eating a hamburger.
do people taxidermy fish?
Yeah, it's a lot harder though because the fish lose their color right away, so you have to like spray paint them.
Interesting. And then like if you are into like let's say you go to that week-long program in Idaho for taxidermy and you're like, I want to do butterflies. Are they like that's not taxidermy?
Yeah, no, that is taxidermy. It's just not. It's more. It's different because like with those, you're really just kind of like pinning them into the right shape and like getting them to look a certain way. You're rarely doing the same sort of labor intensive work that you would do with like a rabbit. Like with a rabbit, you have to skin the rabbit, the insides, like all the muscle, the bone, all of that. That's not in the taxidermy. That's taken out. When you
Mm-hmm.
see taxidermy, you're seeing like a foam sculpture that looks like a bear put inside or with
Skin
like
of a bear.
fur and the skin of the bear over top, and then the eyes are fake. Sometimes the teeth are real. Sometimes the tongue is fake though, because like the tongue is a muscle. The tongue is going to decompose. So you're really trying to like limit the amount of decomposition that's happening. What you're basically seeing is like a fur coat.
I always remember as a kid, like this is one of the I don't have many stories that I remember. So one of the specific stories, probably one of 50 stories I have that are specific about childhood. My mom, I remember I was like hugging my dog and I was like, Mom, when Dylan dies, like, can we make him into a carpet? And my mom like looked at my dad and was like, yeah, no, definitely not. And I think that's because she's like very like Catholic. I mean, Catholics, I think in general are like not even that into like cremation. So it's very like, I don't know. I'm not super up to date on that, but like basically what I want to imagine with you is like imagine a world in which people, taxidermied their pets. Like once
People
they
do.
died, they had them around their homes.
Yeah. I mean, like people do some creepy things. I think collecting dolls is kind of creepy, but collecting the dead body of an animal you love is not as creepy to me. I don't know. So, it's just how you want to honor the life of an animal. Like everything's going to die eventually. Yeah, this particular raccoon I have hanging up, its life ended before the time that it would have. But for me, I've like the point of it was learning how to deal with death. And so I think we're all just trying to find different ways to deal with death like every single day. Like how do I make life more interesting so that when I
Hmm.
do die I don't regret it? And like I mean I think that's what this whole conversation comes back to is like what makes living worth it for you?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's death that puts life into perspective the most.
Hmm.
So I think that you wanting to have your dog as a rug is like not that weird. Actually, um, like people love wearing fur because it feels
I
awesome.
think like if you take on a project like that, like if you take on like a Cruella de Vil, like legit, I'm converting my dog who already died into a carpet. You just like for me, what comes to mind is like you need to do that process which with such care and precision and excellence so that you don't like botch the job because
Yeah.
it's like literally disgusting the idea of how like it's just so disrespectful the idea of like having a piece of fur made from your dog that's like didn't really work out or ended up like sitting in the garage. Like it has to be like so well thought out if that's your plan. And
Yeah.
I feel like you need to invest like a lot in making it really
Yeah.
amazing and quality and
That's why it's harder to work with someone's pet than it is to work with like a random raccoon. I didn't know this raccoon personally. Like, I don't know what his personality was like, but your dog like had a personality that you were very familiar with. So, if someone did try to turn it into a taxidermy that was like supposed to look like the dog was still alive, it wouldn't ever really be the same, you know?
I love that this conversation went to this fascinating place. My cousin Margot says it's definitely not for me, taxidermy, but it's totally in our old school fur trapping history. Oh, yeah, because my family does have fur trapping history in, I think, up in Canada. The closest I ever came was when I worked in Namibia and I did a full necropsy on a cheetah.
So cool. Oh yeah, Catholic relics were about taxidermy a lot. Yeah, and like there's okay, so people have really weird relationships with death. Like the reason they capture the pigeon soul. The reason that we don't have as many mummies is because people in Europe would like crush up mummies and put them in like tinctures and stuff because they thought it would like heal them. And yet at the same time they were all like cannibalism is bad. You can't cannibalism um is I don't know, against God. However, they were totally eating dead bodies themselves. So it's like, yeah. Oh, and there is fake taxidermy as well, which is really
Yeah,
cool.
I love that idea. How would you go about doing that?
You just take like fake fur, and then you would use all of the same uh, tools as a taxidermist, but you like the foam that is like the basis. Like you could order like a foam bear basically from a taxidermy website, and then you could just cover it with fake fur, and you would need the fake eyes and everything like that. And of course, it's not gonna look real. It's gonna feel fake when you touch it. But the point of that is to be like more ethical. So like if you did get your dog taxidermied or done anything with it, that would be considered ethical taxidermy because the dog died of natural causes.
Okay, got it. So anything that's where an animal dies of natural causes, except for wild birds, is ethical, technically.
Well, I mean, it could be ethical. It's just technically not legal to go take like a waterfowl. Like I can't just kill a duck.
Yeah. Kasha, who's a filmmaker in LA, says, I think the Coney Island Sideshow has a taxidermied mermaid.
That was a big thing in the past where people would put together like two different creatures and be like, look at this mythical creature we
Like, I
found.
swear it was real. And they're like, yeah, yeah.
What convinced people for in the past, but these days there are a couple of taxidermy artists who do stuff like that, and they make like just really disturbing creatures. And I'm personally not interested in making stuff like that. Like from an anatomical point of view, they're really interesting, but so disturbing.
So we
Oh,
have
I
we have a minute left. So like this turned into a fascinating conversation. I'm gonna save it on IGTV. Um, is there anything like I'm sure some of the people who are on here are like Laura Cohen? What a interesting woman. She's in the Bay Area. Like, what are you selling? What can people buy of yours?
Oh, well, I do photography. These here are some photos I did that are double exposures. So it's like this, these are from China when I was there in 2013. And then like you can't really see it as well here, but this is some photos I took in Tokyo. Um, I do other stuff like this is a sculpture I made. This is I don't know if you can see it that well.
We can't see it that well, but people can go to your website.
Yeah, go to my website. There's here, how do I turn around? Turn around.
Um, you can, and you teach yoga. They can follow you, and you'll see some
Yeah,
of her
my
yoga
website
stuff.
is my name, lauracohen.art. So